Michelle Eisen, who I've gotten the pleasure to know recently, is a 12-year Starbucks barista in Buffalo, New York, also a great city for those that haven't spent much time there. She led a successful organizing drive at her store, becoming the first unionized Starbucks in the nation. I know, that's very exciting. Even more exciting, it immediately galvanizes a movement, not only in Buffalo, but all over the country. They've grown now in less than a year to include over 260 union stores with 7,000 members. Michelle facilitates the campaign's National Bargaining Committee. She's testified on Capitol Hill before the House Education and Labor Committee. She's also stage production manager with 2 decades of experience in the local professional theater scene, which again, if you have not experienced in Buffalo, make a point to do. So, I'd like to welcome up Michelle to share some words with us, and I'd like to say that in the last year I've been more inspired than ever to say to hell with the words unorganizable.
So I started with Starbucks in 2010. As Colin said, I'm a production stage manager in the theater industry, and I needed a flexible daytime job that would provide me with health benefits. Enter Starbucks, a self-proclaimed progressive company that stated that they cared about the environment, the community, and their workers, or partners, as they referred to them. And for a time after I was hired, I really believed that to be the case. Fast forward to June of 2021. I, like hundreds of thousands of service workers in the US, had worked through the bulk of the pandemic in customer-facing positions, putting ourselves and our families at risk daily. And in almost all cases, the companies that we worked for completely failed us. We were called essential, but we were treated like we were disposable. And I was done. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I could not continue to work for a company that so blatantly undervalued its partners. At most, I had a few months left in me. Shortly after I made that decision, I received a text message from one of my fellow partners. She asked me if I would be interested in getting a cup of coffee later that week, which is weird because we literally serve coffee all day. But I agreed, and it was at that meeting that she asked me what I thought of the possibility of organizing our Starbucks store. To which I replied, I'd never thought about it. I knew very little about organized labor, but I did know that it included very little of the service industry. In spite of that, I asked her to tell me everything she could, and when she was done, I calmly explained that while I was interested, I didn't know how much time I was going to be able to commit. After all, the theater industry was opening back up post-pandemic, and I was going to be busy with production work, but I certainly had no intention of standing in their way. Then about a week after we filed our petition, I was called into my first anti-union meeting with corporate. We sat in a circle at a hotel conference room and listened to Roxanne Williams, the then president of Starbucks North America, tell us that we are all partners and that the company has already given us all so much. And I saw the looks on the faces of my coworkers as we were being bullied and manipulated into voting against our best interests. And that's the moment I realized that I couldn't take a passive role in this fight. That not actively working against my fellow coworkers was not the same as standing with them. They concluded the meeting by saying that they were just giving us the facts, and if we wanted information about the union, we should contact a union rep. So I raised my hand and I said, I'm one of the partner organizers and I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have, and there was no turning back from there. On December 9th, 2021, we won the first Starbucks union in the US. Since then, our campaign has grown into a movement. As of today, we have 270 unionized locations across the country, with more joining every day. As reference, a little under a year ago, there were 0 unionized locations in the US. I've been told many times that our campaign is different, that it is unlike organizing campaigns of the past, and while that's true in some ways, it's more accurate to say that what Starbucks workers are doing is merely an extension of what many worker organizers throughout US labor history have already done. We have been able to harness social media and video platforms to talk with workers across the country and globe, and these have been invaluable tools. But the most important lesson of our success is that the basic elements of organizing are the same as they were 100 years ago. Our movement is rooted in the ability to connect with one another on a human level, through the interests we share in our workplaces and industry. Using those techniques refined from previous organizing efforts, we have created a campaign that is largely worker-led. We refer to them as partner organizers. It's simply workers from one organized store connecting with a worker and helping that worker organize their store. We also play large roles in other aspects of the campaign, such as communications, broader strategy questions, and media. I mentioned earlier how little I knew about organized labor before my involvement with this campaign, but that I knew it included very little of the service industry, in large part because it's an industry that has long been thought to be unorganizable for a multitude of reasons. It takes a lot of support to organize an industry like ours, and a lot of unions would consider our campaign too big a risk to take. Fortunately for us, Gary Bonadonna Jr. of Workers United own Rochester Regional Joint Board here was willing to take on that challenge. And we are very lucky to have been able to form such a collaborative relationship with a union as established as Workers United. Not only is our worker-led structure supported, but it is encouraged and even celebrated by both the staff and our fellow union members, who have committed $1 million of their own dues to a strike and relief fund for our Starbucks campaign. I can't think of a more fitting example of solidarity. There is a pervasive way of thinking that has been drilled into most surface workers, that the jobs are unskilled, that we don't deserve fair wages or safe working conditions, and that being disrespected regularly is just part of the job. And if we don't like it, we can go work somewhere else. Anybody who has ever spent a day on the floor in one of these cafes can tell you that our jobs are far from unskilled. Our labor is valuable. It brings in billions of dollars a year for Starbucks, and without our labor, the business would simply cease to exist. And I hope this movement is a small step in changing that way of thinking. Our asks are pretty simple. Listen to our voices when it comes to working conditions, pay us fairly, invest in our futures with the company, because we are Starbucks. I'm often asked what it's going to take to win this fight, and to me the answer is simple, at least in theory. We continue to organize, we continue to support our fellow workers, we stand together to condemn Starbucks' anti-union behavior, and we ask the public to do the same. Because we are not only fighting corporate, we are also fighting the public brand of Starbucks. If Starbucks truly were the progressive company it professes to be, it would recognize our right to organize and be a leader in the industry. And I have a lot of hope that we will get there, but it won't be alone. Until then, we will continue to stand together, and we will continue to fight. Less than 48 hours from today will be the 1-year anniversary of that first unionized location in Buffalo, New York. There is a large rally happening in our city, downtown, and we would invite anyone here who would like to drive up to Buffalo for a couple of hours to join us, to stand in solidarity, to continue to call on Starbucks to do the right thing, to come to the table and start negotiating that first contract in good faith, and just to share the camaraderie that we feel so strongly from our city and from Rochester and our surrounding city, and basically anyone who isn't in the top 1%, because everybody seems to be rooting for us except for those who are afraid of us. So thank you all very much for having me here to speak with you today and to celebrate this wonderful organization.